I think Democrats and the liberal media owe the president and they owe the American people an apology. They wasted 2 years and created a massive disruption and distraction.
The Trump administration reminding the media just how wrong they got it. Questions of obstruction aside, the Attorney General's release of the Mueller report summary, which found no collusion between Team Trump and Russia during the 2016 campaign, is a major victory for the president in his ongoing war with the media. One that saw members of the press take what some are calling a severe credibility hit. In fact, our next guest says Mueller's conclusion of no collusion is so bad that it is, in effect, a death blow for the reputation of the American news media. Matt Taibbi is a contributing editor for Rolling Stone and the author of the online serial book Hate Inc., which debuts in print this October. His latest chapter, it's official, Russiagate is this generation's WMD. The Iraq War faceplant damaged the reputation of the press. Russiagate just destroyed it. Matt, welcome to the program once again.
Thank you for having me on.
So, Matt, for our viewers who may be too young to remember, could you briefly summarize what the WMD fiasco was and the media's role in that fiasco?
Well, it was really a two-part error in the run-up to the Iraq War. The Bush administration was very anxious to invade Iraq for reasons that we now know were tied to a sort of larger, more ambitious foreign policy agenda called regime change and benevolent hegemony. But they needed a fig leaf of an excuse to go in, and so between themselves and the British, they cooked up this idea that they would have to go in and invade on the pretext of stopping Saddam Hussein, who was a violator of UN inspections regimes because he had weapons of mass destruction. So the press missed two things there. They missed the real reason that we wanted to go in, and then they fell for the idea that Saddam Hussein had weapons of mass destruction. Yeah. And this went on for a period of years. They created this whole mania about how we had to go in immediately, despite the fact that we'd successfully contained that country for years.
I mean, the myth of WMD, of course, led to catastrophe, destruction, over 100,000 Iraqis dead, thousands of Americans dead, not to mention $2 trillion in cost. But you say that Russiagate makes WMD look like a pimple.
Well,
really?
Yeah, well, in the piece, I make very clear that I'm not talking about the real world consequences. And I say, of course, the WMD thing resulted in hundreds of thousands of deaths. Unless this somehow leads to nuclear combat with Russia, we're never going to see that scale of real-world consequence. But what I was really talking about was kind of the scale and the breadth of the kind of journalistic mistake here. It was so far-reaching that I think it'll damage our credibility more than the WMD thing was.
So if it is as you characterize it, what led to it? Is it as simple as what Ted Koppel said the other day, that the media generally thought that the president was so bad that, in effect, and I think these were his words, they wanted him out?
Well, there was a little bit of that, for sure. I mean, I remember there was a very important and influential editorial in the business by Jim Rutenberg in the New York Times in August of 2016 that essentially said Trump was so bad that we needed to rethink our concept of objectivity. We had to start thinking about being true to history's judgment in addition to just being true. And this was really a signal that, we started to have to be more activist and political minded in our thinking. And when the Steele report was leaked and when it was suggested that Donald Trump had some kind of unsavory relationship with Russian intelligence, we jumped on that story for a variety of reasons, but I think one of them, yes, was the idea that we wanted Donald Trump out. Also, there was the other issue, which is that we had Consistently mispredicted everything to do with Donald Trump's presidential campaign. We dismissed the idea that he could even be the nominee, so that when he did get elected, it was a total shock to almost everybody's audiences. And so this explanation actually made more sense to people than maybe it should have.
Yeah. Now, you wrote that as it played out, the press has, in fact, handed Trump the mother of all campaign issues heading into 2020. But, as most journalists will tell you, it has not played out yet. We haven't even seen the Mueller report. All we've seen is a summary.
Right. And obviously, if and when the summary does come out, it's going to be chock full of stuff that I would imagine will be highly embarrassing to Trump. But Trump is a person who wraps his arms around embarrassment. That's, throughout his run as a politician, we've seen that he's not afraid of things that normal politicians would run screaming from. What he's going to focus on and what he's going to hammer on repeatedly is the core finding of the report, which is, that they could not find evidence of collusion or coordination with Russia's election interference activities. That particular concept, he is going to hammer over and over and over again, because that was the subtext of thousands of news stories during this period.
Glenn Greenwald, who is a progressive journalist like yourself, who also agrees with you about the media getting the story wrong, says that its problem is not only that the media got it wrong and that it hurt its reputation, but that there were plenty of important stories that were not covered as a result. Do you agree with him, and what are some of the stories if you do?
Well, I agree with him in the sense that this is an outgrowth of the problem that we never really reckon with the fact that Trump won. Because if journalists had been paying attention, if they had been out there in the campaign trail talking to people, and I was one of the people who covered Trump's campaign, I would go out there in the crowds and I would hear things like, I will vote for anybody who is not a politician this year. I don't care who it is. I heard somebody said to me, I'll vote for the first guy out of that rec center over any politician who's a member of the political establishment. People were so mad about everything from the lack of health care to lack of job security to immigration, which is a very loaded topic. But there was a massive organic anger out there that Donald Trump, being a very canny politician in a lot of ways, took advantage of.
So if the press's reputation is as damaged as you say it is, what does it have to do to regain the reputation?
I mean, that's a difficult thing. I mean, I think the major mistake that we made during this time was this idea that we had to become more politically activist in our reporting in order to have a bigger impact on the world. Really, the press derives almost all of its power and influence from the perception that we're outside politics, that we're neutral arbiters, we're just calling balls and strikes, right? Once we actually get onto the playing field, we lose all of our power. We lose our respect from the politicians, and we lose the respect of the audience. We have to get back to the place where we're sort of not in it anymore, and we're seen as just people who tell you what happened today, and I don't think we're in that place right now.
So what's your best guess? Will we get back to that?
I think it's tough because the media landscape now is so completely divided, and the financial incentives do not encourage us to go back to that place. Right now, we have two distinctly different types of media. There's conservative media that plays to conservative audiences, and then there's other media that plays to sort of blue state audiences. Naturally, organically, they're going to give each of those audiences news they want to hear, which is going to undermine our credibility further.
All right. Well, Matt, thank you so much for joining us today to talk about this.
Thank you for having me on.